Look around you. Everyone's talking, everyone's posting, everyone's pretending. But here's the truth. The loudest one in the room is usually the weakest. If you want power, success, and real control over your life, the first thing you need to do is shut your mouth and lock in. Because the second you focus on yourself and go silent, you become dangerous. Silence has been misinterpreted by weak minds as weakness, as if the loudest man in the room is somehow the strongest. But in reality, the man who speaks the least often holds the most power. Silence is not submission, it's a tactic. It's not about being afraid to speak, it's about knowing when to speak and when to sit back and watch everyone else show their hand. When you stay quiet, you remain unpredictable. And unpredictability is power, because if they can't read you, they can't control you. They can't manipulate you, distract you, or derail you. That silence becomes a wall between you and the world's chaos. In a society obsessed with constant talking, attention-seeking, and showing off, silence is rebellion. Everyone's trying to go viral, trying to shout over each other to be seen. They overshare their goals, expose their next move, seek applause for effort instead of results. But the man who stays quiet is the one who's truly dangerous. He's not playing the game to be seen, he's playing to win. And he knows that the real game happens in silence. Away from validation, away from noise. He's not wasting energy justifying himself. He's building. He's sharpening. He's observing how others move while keeping his strategy locked away. People often speak because they're insecure. They feel a need to prove something, to impress, to defend, to explain. That's weakness. If you're solid in your path, you don't need to convince anyone of anything. Let your results speak. Let your actions prove your worth. Silence is not just about not talking. It's about being so locked into your purpose that distractions don't deserve your voice. You don't argue. You don't explain yourself to people who are on your level. You move, you produce, you evolve. While others debate about how it should be done, you're out there doing it. The man who masters silence also masters emotional control. He's not reactive. He doesn't let every little thing get under his skin. That kind of man is unshakable. You insult him, he doesn't flinch. You doubt him, he doesn't justify. Because his validation doesn't come from the outside. He doesn't need applause. He knows his value. He's not in the business of reacting. He's in the business of executing. When you become that kind of man, calm, focused, and silent, you become the man that makes others uncomfortable. They don't know what you're thinking, what you're planning, or what you're about to do next. That mystery drives them crazy. That's how you win, by making your silence louder than their noise. Silence gives you clarity. When you're not constantly talking, you're thinking. You're planning moves 3 steps ahead while they're celebrating a single step forward. You're conserving energy, studying the board, and moving with precision. You don't fall into the trap of useless conversations, gossip, or arguments. You're too busy becoming better. You stop being available for nonsense. And that alone changes the kind of energy you attract. You stop attracting distractions and start attracting respect. People notice when a man walks in silence with confidence. They sense something different. They sense control. When you use silence as strategy, people begin to treat you differently. They lean in. They try harder to understand you. They start guessing at your thoughts, your motives, your next moves. You're no longer someone they can categorize or underestimate. You're a question mark they can't solve. That's power. Because while they're guessing, you're moving. While they're watching, you're working. While they're speaking, you're building. And when it's finally time to speak, if you ever choose to, your words carry the weight of everything you've already proven. You didn't need to say anything. You became undeniable. Every ounce of energy you give to worrying about what others think is a chunk of your power being drained, piece by piece, until you've got nothing left for yourself. That's how most people live. Enslaved by opinions, paralyzed by judgment, and constantly seeking approval from people who wouldn't even show up for them in a crisis. It's pathetic. And the worst part is, it's all voluntary. You choose to hand over your energy every time you scroll through social media wondering if you're enough. Every time you hesitate on a decision because someone might not like it. Every time you dumb down your ambition just to make people around you feel comfortable. Rich, powerful, successful individuals don't operate that way. They don't seek validation, they don't explain themselves, they don't adjust who they are to fit into other people's weak standards. They focus inward. Their energy is invested in building, learning, lifting weights, generating income, and becoming sharper in mind and body, not in wasting time wondering what some irrelevant person on the internet thinks about their path. Because the truth is, no one stronger than you is judging you. It's always the weaker ones, the ones who gave up, the ones who didn't have the discipline or courage to keep going. And if you waste your time listening to them, you'll end up just like them, bitter, broke, and forgettable. Most people don't even realize how fragile their energy is. They wake up and the first thing they do is check their phone. They open their mind to the entire world before they've even taken control of their own day. They let people, trends, news, and noise dictate how they feel, think, and act. They're puppets being pulled by 1,000 invisible strings. And then they wonder why they feel empty, frustrated, and directionless. Your energy is your fuel. You've only got so much of it every day. And if you let it leak into distractions, drama, and insecurity, don't be surprised when there's nothing left for self-improvement. Focusing on yourself is the antidote to this energy leak. When you lock in on your goals, real goals, not fantasies, you stop caring about external noise. You develop tunnel vision. And that's when your power starts compounding. Because every rep you put in at the gym, every dollar you invest, every book you read, every hour you use productively, it all builds on itself. But if half your energy is spent checking if people approve, your results will always be mediocre. You don't build empires by committee, you build them by focusing so hard on your own mission that the rest of the world becomes background noise. Letting go of external validation doesn't mean becoming arrogant. It means becoming immune. Immune to guilt, immune to judgment, immune to the need to be understood. People who are truly on their path rarely feel the need to explain it. They're not trying to be liked, they're trying to win. And winning takes everything you've got. It takes silence, sacrifice, and laser-sharp focus. You can't afford to waste time wondering if someone thinks you're too intense, too focused, too ambitious. If they think that, they were never built for the path you're on. That's fine. Let them talk. You stay working. Every time you catch yourself thinking about someone else's opinion, redirect that thought, put it into action, lift something heavier, write something sharper, learn something deeper, build something better. That's how you reclaim your energy. That's how you go from being distracted to being dominant. You don't need the world's permission to succeed, you just need to stop handing it your power. When you disappear and focus on your craft, everything changes. You're no longer part of the noise. You stop being another average face in the crowd. You stop running your mouth about what you're going to do and actually start doing it. And in that silence, something starts to grow inside you. Discipline, focus, power. The very act of pulling away from the distractions, the endless talking, the mindless conversations, it all creates a vacuum where progress can breathe. That's the space where the real transformation happens. Not in the spotlight, not in group chats, not in shallow relationships. It happens when you're alone, committed, and consistent. Most people waste their time pretending to work. They want to look productive instead of being productive. They're constantly switching tasks, jumping from idea to idea, chasing instant gratification. But the man who disappears, who vanishes into his own grind, becomes a monster. Not in a week, not in a month, but over time. 6 months of full isolation with no distractions will take you further than 6 years of half-committed effort. The difference is total immersion. When you give everything to the process gives everything back to you. You become obsessed with results, not recognition. And that obsession fuels consistency. Every day you do the work, even when no one's watching, even when it sucks, even when it's boring. See, disappearing isn't about running away. It's about stepping into the real battlefield. It's not glamorous. It's gritty, repetitive, lonely. But it's necessary. Because when you eliminate all the noise, you finally get to hear your own thoughts. You understand your weaknesses. You face your limitations, and instead of complaining, you attack them. Every day becomes a war against comfort. You don't negotiate with laziness, you destroy it. You wake up earlier, you train harder, you learn faster, and slowly you start separating from the rest of the pack. Not because you're lucky, but because you're willing to do what they won't. The truth is, most people can't handle isolation because they're addicted to being seen. They need people to witness their efforts in order to feel validated. That's weakness. Validation comes from results, not from claps. You don't need praise when you're building something real. You need patience and brutal self-honesty. Disappearing forces you to confront yourself. There's no one to blame, no one to impress, just you and your work. That's where the power is. That's where real confidence is forged, not in fake humility, not in loud proclamations, but in day after day of silent progress. And here's the part that breaks people. They don't get immediate feedback. They grind for a week, don't see results, and quit. But the man who stays locked in for 6 months, who trusts the process, who doesn't care what the world thinks, is the man who comes back unrecognizable. Physically sharper, mentally stronger, spiritually unshakable. While the rest stayed stagnant, you evolved. Because you weren't seeking entertainment, you were seeking greatness. You weren't scrolling, you were building. You weren't arguing, you were winning. And when you come back, the results will speak louder than anything you ever could. You won't need to explain your worth. It'll be obvious. So disappear. Ghost everyone if you have to. Put your phone on silent, kill the noise, kill the distractions. Lock in, stay consistent, build something that can't be ignored. And when you return, don't say a word. Let them see the new version of you. Let them feel it. Let them regret ever doubting you. That's the reward of disappearing, emerging undeniable. You become dangerous when you don't react. When someone tries to provoke you and you just stare. When they try to get a rise out of you and you stay composed, cold, unshaken. That's real power. Emotional control is the foundation of dominance. The world today thrives on reaction. Everyone is triggered, offended, flustered, constantly losing control over nonsense. You take that bait and you're just another pawn in the game. But when you master the art of not responding emotionally, you remove their power. No one can control a man who's in control of himself. People think power is loud. They think it's about flexing, shouting, proving something. That's amateur level. Power is silence. Power is restraint. Power is looking someone dead in the eyes while they scream and staying silent because you know reacting would give them what they want. Emotional reactions are currency. Every time you react, you pay with your energy, your focus, your time. You get dragged into fights that don't matter, drama that's beneath you, debates that lead nowhere. It's a trap. And the ones who win in this world are the ones who can walk past the bait without even blinking. When you don't react, you stay strategic. That's when you start making moves that actually change your life. You stop burning energy on clowns and start investing that energy into stacking wins. While others are out there reacting, arguing, proving, you're building. They spend their days offended and exhausted. You spend yours focused and composed. And over time, that gap grows massive. Because what seems like small emotional outbursts day after day turn into habits. Habits that destroy clarity, discipline, and momentum. Meanwhile, your restraint becomes your edge. You're not affected. You stay calm. And calm men make calculated moves. Think about it. Who's more dangerous? The guy who gets loud every time he's tested, or the guy who smiles and says nothing? You already know the answer. The calm man is the one you can't predict. You don't know what he's thinking. You don't know what he's going to do. He doesn't let you into his world. He doesn't play by your emotional games. That's the man people fear. That's the man who walks into a room and commands attention without saying a word. Because his energy isn't scattered, it's concentrated, sharp, controlled. This kind of power isn't built overnight. It comes from suffering, from discipline, from getting tested and choosing to stay silent. It comes from realizing that most people want a reaction because they don't have any real power themselves. It's their only weapon, to throw you off, to provoke you, to get you emotional. And if they succeed, they win. You lose. Even if you're right, you lose because you handed over control. But when you learn to hold it in, to stay still while everything around you is chaos, you become untouchable. Nothing outside of you dictates how you feel. That's strength. The man who can master his emotions controls outcomes. In business, in relationships, in war. He doesn't rush, doesn't panic, doesn't fall into traps. He watches, he waits, and when he strikes, it's lethal because it's calculated. No wasted energy, no wasted words, just action. Ruthless, effective, deliberate action. That's how winners operate. They're not loud, they're not reactive. They're composed, and that composure makes them dangerous. The world doesn't know what to do with a man it can't provoke. A man who doesn't flinch, a man who doesn't fold. That man owns himself, and a man who owns himself cannot be owned by anyone. Every second you spend worrying about what someone else thinks is a second you're stealing from your own destiny. You weren't born to be liked, you weren't created to be understood, and you damn sure weren't built to follow the crowd. That's what most people don't understand. They live their whole lives enslaved to opinions, walking on eggshells, filtering their truth, watering themselves down to fit in. And for what? So people who don't even respect themselves can feel comfortable around you? That's weakness disguised as politeness. It's fear hiding behind social approval. And that's exactly how the world keeps powerful men weak, by teaching them to seek permission before they act, speak, or move. If you want to be great, you have to develop tunnel vision. You need to lock in on your goals so hard that outside noise becomes irrelevant. People will talk. They'll doubt you. They'll criticize your every move. Let them. That's a sign you're doing something right. No one talks about the man who's not a threat. If your presence doesn't stir something in others, envy, fear, admiration, doubt, and invisible men don't win. So when they talk, you stay focused. When they mock, you build. When they try to throw shade, you use it to sharpen your fire. Every great man in history was misunderstood, hated, criticized, ridiculed before he was praised. If you can't handle that phase, you don't deserve the crown. The truth is, people will always have something to say. If you're broke, they'll say you're lazy. If you're rich, they'll say you're greedy. If you're quiet, you're arrogant. If you speak up, you're too loud. No matter what you do, someone will find a way to twist it. That's human nature. But here's the secret. None of it matters. Their opinions don't pay your dreams real. Their applause doesn't build your empire. The only thing that matters is what you do when the door closes and the spotlight fades. The work you put in, the habits you build, the battles you win in silence. That's why most people stay stuck. They waste time worrying about fitting in instead of standing out. They want to be accepted by everyone instead of respected by the few that matter. But power doesn't come from being agreeable. Power comes from being undeniable. From being so good at what you do that they can't ignore you no matter how much they want to. And you can't become undeniable by following the herd. You have to walk alone. You have to back yourself when no one else does. You have to trust your vision even when it looks like madness to others. When you let go of the need for approval, a shift happens. You move differently. You speak with confidence. You stop hesitating. You stop apologizing for wanting more. And that energy changes everything. People start to feel it. They sense that you don't need them, that you're not here to impress, that you're locked in on a mission they can't understand. That's intimidating, that's attractive, and that's powerful. But it starts with killing the people pleaser in you. That voice that asks, will they like me if I do this? Needs to be replaced with, will this get me closer to my goal? The game isn't about being liked, it's about being respected. And respect doesn't come from conformity, it comes from courage. The courage to say no, the courage to stand alone, the courage to chase what's yours even when the crowd's laughing. The sooner you stop caring about opinions, the sooner you start building something that lasts. They'll mock you now. They'll doubt you. They'll call you arrogant, crazy, obsessed. But when you win, they'll rewrite the story. They always do. Because results shut mouths. Results demand respect. And results only come to those who never waste time seeking validation. Every man who rises to the top understands this one truth. Silence is a weapon. Not the silence of fear or cowardice, but the silence of calculated moves. The silence of discipline. The silence of a man who doesn't need to talk about what he's doing because he knows exactly what he's doing. The world is filled with noise, people yelling about their goals, their intentions, their ideas. But the ones who really make an impact, they're the quiet ones. They're too busy executing. They're too locked in to explain themselves to anyone. And that's the secret. When you stay silent and focus entirely on yourself, everything begins to shift. Not just your mindset, but your results, your energy, your influence. You waste power every time you explain your moves. You give away leverage every time you announce your next step. The more people know, the more they interfere. Jealousy creeps in, doubt is projected onto you, haters get to work. But when you go dark, when you disappear and start building behind closed doors, no one can stop what they can't see. Silence protects your vision. It gives you room to breathe, to plan, to sharpen your skills without external pressure or noise. Most people will never understand this because they crave validation. They want the likes, the shares, the applause. But applause doesn't build legacies, grind does. The moment you make your journey public, you invite distractions. Everyone suddenly becomes a critic, an expert, a judge of your path. And if you're not strong enough mentally, that noise can derail you. You start adjusting based on feedback. You slow down because someone planted doubt. You pivot not because it's strategic, but because you're scared of how others will react. But when you operate in silence, all of that vanishes. You answer to no one but your higher self. You're not performing, you're progressing. You're not trying to look successful, you're working to be successful. That's the difference between winners and everyone else. Winners don't need a crowd to validate the mission. The people around you, they talk. They talk about what they're going to do, they make plans, they fantasize. But that's all it ever is, noise. Talking tricks the brain into feeling like it's achieving something. It gives people a false sense of momentum. But there's no progress in talking, no rewards, only the illusion of movement. And the more time you spend talking about your goals, the less time you have to actually chase them. Real men don't speak, they build. They wake up early, they grind, they study, they fail, they get up again. And they do it without broadcasting every move. And when you stay silent long enough, something else happens. People start to notice without you saying a word. They feel the shift in your energy. They see the difference in how you walk, talk, carry yourself. You don't need to explain that you're leveling up. They'll see it. You don't need to post it. They'll feel it. Your results will speak, and when they do, they'll be louder than anything you could have said. That's how you command respect. That's how you own a room without opening your mouth. That's how you rise. Not by being seen, but by being undeniable. The process is not glamorous, it's lonely, it's repetitive, it requires insane levels of self-discipline, and that's why most people can't do it. They need attention to keep going. They need external motivation. But you've got to be different. You've got to find your power in isolation. You've got to lock in, go ghost, and let your silence become your loudest weapon. Because in a world obsessed with noise, the man who stays quiet and builds in private is the one who wins the loudest in the end. When you shut out the world, cut the noise, and put every ounce of your energy into yourself, something powerful happens. You become unstoppable, not because you shouted the loudest, posted the most, or begged for attention, but because you operated in silence, moved with purpose, and let your results do the talking. While everyone else was wasting time chasing validation, you were building. While they talked, you acted. And now, you walk into any room and they feel it, the discipline, the control, the power. So remember this, when you focus on yourself and stay silent, the world has no choice but to watch everything fall into place around you.